I hesitated when they offered me the night manager position at McDonald's. I had already been working there for 6 months, but I was on the day shift. I seldom worked until the end of the day and had spoken with some coworkers on the night shift. They all said they didn't have a second to rest because they were short-staffed, and at that hour, the customers were terrible. I figured that's why they couldn't find a manager. In 6 months, there had been 4 of them, and each one had suddenly resigned. The last one was named Jesse. Before that, he worked afternoons and always arrived completely high. It happened so frequently that it became normal. One day, he arrived completely sober, and I realized why they chose to hire him. It didn't surprise me when he accepted the promotion. A key benefit of this role was the lack of micromanagement. No surprise clients or boss at this hour, as the big boss slept peacefully at home. We could lie to the customer about the ice cream machine being broken without facing repercussions. But Jesse also quit shortly after. What surprised me most was that he resigned after working there for less than a week. But most of all, he left without warning in the middle of the night and never returned. His final paycheck remained in his locker, as no one had succeeded in contacting him to retrieve it. And it was shortly after that they offered me the job. As an 18-year-old, I was filled with uncertainty about my future and life goals. But the salary was almost double the minimum wage. So I accepted the job. I had a week of training, and that's how I became the manager of the restaurant from 7 in the evening to 7 in the morning, 5 nights a week in total. And it wasn't that bad. During the first 3 hours, I had 1 additional employee in the kitchen and another taking drive-thru orders. They both left at 3 in the morning. I was then supposed to stay alone with Miriam, who was making sandwiches in the kitchen. Miriam was a small, quiet woman in her 40s. She had been working in this McDonald's kitchen for a decade. She didn't speak French very well, but she understood it without any problem. At around 4 on a Sunday morning, I realized why Jesse had left. The drive-thru and parking lot were completely empty. The sun and restaurant tables were spotless. No one had entered after the cleaner finished his work. The only sound you could hear was that of the fryers. I still had a lot to do: check the computer system, close out the register, and take care of other little things. I took a short break, then leaned on the counter, looking toward the restaurant tables. All of them were empty. Only the drive-thru was open after 11 post-meridium. I was looking, nothing in particular, but my gaze stopped on the reflection in the window, because I saw something move under one of the tables. I didn't have the best view, so I leaned forward, and I squinted until I was sure I wasn't imagining things. What I saw moving was the legs of a little girl. They lay stretched out under the table. She wore white shoes. Her legs were bare, but I couldn't make out the rest. Her heels rested on the floor, with her feet pointing upward. And suddenly, she started moving from left to right, as if she was listening to music. I watched her for a moment. Was she hurt, or was it a bad joke? People had already managed to get into the restaurant after closing. Either they wanted to place an order, or it was to use the restroom. But what I was seeing there was very strange. Usually, they would go straight to the counter. I would tell them, "Sorry, but you're not allowed to be here. The restaurant is closed." Most of the time, they left without causing trouble. "Hey." And I would shout, "The restaurant is closed." My voice echoed through the room. And as soon as the little girl heard my shout, her legs froze. They stayed like that for a moment. All of a sudden, the little girl slowly folded her legs until I couldn't see them anymore. I thought she was getting up and I expected to see her appear, but that didn't happen. I shouted again, "I know you're there." Nothing happened. Sighing, I removed the drive-thru headset and headed towards the tables. She was going to confront me, whether she wanted to or not. When I got to the table, I saw that there was no one underneath. I checked under all the other tables, but no one was there. I scanned the entire restaurant with my eyes. Except for Miriam in the kitchen, it was completely empty. I stood there for a moment. I was like paralyzed. After a short moment, I came to my senses and went back toward the counter. I tried not to remember that I had imagined a pair of legs moving under a table for several minutes. I convinced myself that I wasn't going crazy, just tired. After putting the headset back on and verifying the drive-thru was empty, I checked to ensure all doors were properly locked. And they all were. If there truly was a little girl hiding in that restaurant, she would have been there for a minimum of 5 hours. It seemed impossible. I smiled, thinking someone would have noticed her long ago. I glanced around the restaurant again as I returned to the counter and I froze. Because in the reflection of the window, I could now see a white shoe resting on the floor. But this time, there were no legs attached to it. There was no one under the table. I turned around to try to get Miriam's attention, thinking that maybe she would be able to see it too. But she had left the kitchen, likely to fetch ingredients from the pantry. I turned around again to view the reflection from the optimal angle. But all I could see under the table was darkness. And right in front of the white shoe? Seconds later, a small pale hand emerged from the darkness, grabbed the shoe and silently pulled it back under the table. I held my breath and stared at the reflection in the window. For what felt like an eternity, I waited for something else to appear to confirm to me that it wasn't a hallucination. I don't even know how long it took me to realize that the phone was ringing. I heard Miriam calling me from the office. When I turned around, I saw that she was walking toward me with the cordless phone. I took one last look at the reflection in the window and took the phone. Being unable to see anything let me relax, I muttered to myself. Something like, "It's late, you're tired, you're not going crazy." And then I thanked Miriam and answered the call. I wasn't expecting anything in particular. Usually at that time it was either a mistake, kids playing pranks, or people wanting to check if we were really open all night. When I heard the voice on the phone, I knew it wasn't any of those 3 cases.
"Hello, help me please, I'm begging you."
A young girl's soft, quivering voice emanated from the phone receiver. My eyes turned back to the window. "Who is it?"
"I'm stuck."
she said. This time, I didn't see anything strange under the table.
I'm stuck under the table.
"Where are you?" In my head, I knew exactly where she was.
"Help me get out of here."
She continued, seemingly ignoring my words.
"I'm stuck, I can't get out."
I had goosebumps. Before all that, the reflection was blurry, but now, strangely, I could see perfectly clearly, just like in a mirror. But in the reflection, there was nothing out of the ordinary, nothing at all. I was pulled from under the table, but the caller kept pleading with me.
"I'm begging you, sir. I've been stuck here for a long time."
I almost hung up the phone at that very moment. If that had happened, I could have told myself that none of this ever happened. And if the phone had rung again, I simply wouldn't have answered. But it wasn't something you could simply ignore. And I had this distressing feeling that, no matter how many times I hung up the phone, the little girl wouldn't stop calling me. I went back to the tables. It felt like it took an eternity to get there, even though I was walking at my usual pace. I kept thinking about Jesse and how he disappeared without a trace. So I leaned over and looked under the table, and just like the last time I did it, there was no one there. I sighed with relief. The voice from the phone seemed fake. It was now clear that it was a prank, occurring at the perfect moment. "Well played, you idiot," I said into the receiver. "And don't even think about calling back."
"But I can see you now."
she said, sounding genuinely disturbed.
"Look, I'm right next to you. You're wearing a black uniform, a cap, and a microphone."
"Yes, I know," I replied, annoyed. If this was really a prank, it was time to let them know that I had figured it all out. "This is McDonald's. Everyone wears a uniform."
"But your eyes are brown, you don't have a ring, and you have a bandage on your right hand."
She kept describing me perfectly. I was crouched under the table, my nose was distinct, and my hands were shaking. I looked toward the window again, trying to see the parking lot through the glass. It was inevitable. Someone was watching me from outside, but I was wrong. The reflection was all I needed to see, because inside now, I could make out the face of a little girl peeking out by 2 or 3 centimeters. From under the table, she was staring at me. She was barely an arm's length away. Her lips matched perfectly with the words I was hearing through the phone. I distanced myself, finding a chair. I dropped the receiver on the floor, and I could still hear her voice through it. But no sound came from under the table. She was still in the reflection, perfectly visible, looking at me with big black eyes. She continued speaking without attempting to approach me. I grabbed the phone and ran behind the counter. My heart was racing. I was having trouble breathing. I looked at the window again, and she was still there staring at me, her head barely sticking out above the table. She frowned, and dark red tears started to spread across her face. I put the receiver back to my ear and listened to what she was saying.
"Why did you leave? I thought you were going to help me. I'm stuck and can't get out."
She kept going and I couldn't stop listening to her. It almost made me sick to hear her cry like that.
Please, I just want to be free at last.
Miriam's voice pulled me out of that moment of horror. I turned around and saw that she was looking at me with wide eyes.
Are you okay?
For a moment, I was speechless. Everything that was in the reflection had now disappeared. But now I was convinced that this was not just my imagination. I put the receiver back to my ear and heard the little girl scream again. It was almost comforting. It meant she was real because I could hear her. I spoke to Miriam about the girl and the voice on the phone, but I likely spoke too fast, as she didn't grasp what I was attempting to convey. I gave her the phone and told her to listen. Miriam put the phone to her ear. She listened for a few seconds, then calmly she hung up and set the phone on the counter.
It's the demon child,
she said. What? She repeated slowly, enunciating each word carefully.
The demon child,
she repeated.
She lives under the table. Don't let her touch you, and everything should be fine.
She returned to cleaning the grates, humming as she worked. I heard a noise coming from my headset, and just as I was about to press the button to take the order, my finger stopped a few centimeters away. I looked at the little girl's face through the window again, and just like before, she was staring at me without blinking or looking away. "Hello," said the customer. But taking his order was really the last thing I wanted to do. My hands were sweaty, my head was spinning, I was so shaken up that I felt nauseous. "Is anyone there?" the customer asked again. "Hello?" I took off my headset and walked out, and I never set foot in that cursed building again. "Hello?"